Welcome back. In early 2024, President Donald Trump, back in the Oval Office, launched a sweeping new front in his trade war. Determined to reshape the global economic landscape, he set his sights on America's trading partners with a bold and controversial strategy. He invoked the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, i.e. EPA, citing illicit drugs at the border as a national emergency, and slapped heavy tariffs on China, Mexico, and Canada. This move was unprecedented, leveraging a law designed for emergencies to address trade imbalances. The administration framed this as national security, not just economics. America would use its economic might to protect its borders and people. The message was clear. Economic strength was now a tool of national defense. But by April, the plan exploded in scope. Trump declared the entire U.S. trade deficit an extraordinary threat, expanding tariffs to nearly every nation. This aggressive expansion aimed to address what he saw as systemic exploitation of American markets. Reciprocal tariffs of 10% to 50% hit global trade, justified as fairness. If other countries taxed American goods, the U.S. would hit back. This tit-for-tat approach was designed to level the playing field, but it also risked escalating trade tensions worldwide. The White House called it a radical strategy to rewrite global commerce and bring billions into the U.S. Treasury. Officials argued that this influx of revenue could be used to bolster the economy and reduce national debt. Projections showed these tariffs could funnel up to $4 trillion into government coffers over a decade. This massive sum was seen as a potential game-changer for U.S. fiscal policy. Supporters saw it as a way to fund government, reduce debt, and punish countries seen as exploiting the U.S. They believed this approach would restore American manufacturing and create jobs. The tariffs were sold as a tool to protect American industries and bring back jobs. The administration promised that these measures would revitalize sectors that had been in decline for decades. But this aggressive use of executive power set off alarm bells. Critics from both sides of the aisle questioned the legality and wisdom of such sweeping actions. The IEEPA was meant for targeted foreign policy crises, not for creating a global tax regime. Legal experts warned that this interpretation of the law could set a dangerous precedent. Critics argued Trump was twisting the law far beyond its intent, declaring a trade deficit an emergency to launch a worldwide economic offensive. They feared this could undermine the rule of law and lead to unchecked executive power. This move set the stage for a constitutional showdown. The courts would soon be asked to decide the limits of presidential power in economic matters. The world watched as the U.S. placed the global economy on a knife's edge. Markets reacted with volatility, and international leaders scrambled to respond. The question: could a president use emergency powers to reshape the world's trading system? This unprecedented use of authority raised fundamental questions about the balance of power in the U.S. government. The answer would soon be tested in court. The outcome would have far-reaching implications for the future of global trade and the limits of presidential power. The global tariff war quickly hit American businesses hard. Learning Resources, a small Illinois toy company, paid $14 million in tariffs in 2025, a seven-fold jump that threatened its survival. Across industries, costs soared. Cooperative coffees faced $1.3 million in new taxes, forcing price hikes and debt. Swiss chocolatier Camille Bloch saw its U.S. profit margin wiped out by a 39% tariff. Even giants like Volkswagen reported nearly $1 billion in losses, passing costs to consumers. Brooks Running announced price hikes for its next model year. The tariffs meant to protect American interests were now hitting everyday Americans' wallets. The pain was real, jobs at risk, businesses struggling, prices rising. The backlash grew, fueling legal and political opposition. The tariffs weren't just taxes on foreign goods, they were taxes on Americans. The legal battle wasn't about economics, it was about power. The Constitution gives Congress, not the president, the authority to impose tariffs. Trump's use of IEEPA to levy trillions in new taxes was seen as a direct challenge to this principle. A bipartisan coalition in Congress argued the law allowed emergency regulation, not new taxes. The administration claimed regulate included tariffs in a national emergency. This set up a classic constitutional clash: executive power versus legislative authority. In October 2025, the Senate passed resolutions to end some tariffs, with Republicans breaking ranks. But presidential vetoes loomed, making the Supreme Court the final battleground. The fight was now about the very structure of American government. The outcome would define the limits of presidential power. The Supreme Court case, Learning Resources versus Trump, was the culmination of years of legal battles and mounting public debate. For months, the nation had watched as the case wound its way through the courts, each step raising the stakes higher. 3 federal courts had already ruled against the administration, but the final word rested with the justices. The legal arguments were complex, and the outcome was anything but certain. The stakes were enormous: either dismantle Trump's trade agenda, or radically expand presidential power in ways never seen before. The entire political landscape seemed to hang in the balance. Oral arguments were set for November 5, 2025, drawing national and global attention. Reporters from around the world gathered, capturing every moment as the drama unfolded. A win for Trump would let presidents impose massive taxes by emergency decree, bypassing Congress and reshaping the balance of power. A loss would invalidate his policy and reassert Congress's role in trade and tax law, sending a clear message about the limits of executive authority. The justices faced a core question: did Congress, in 1977, truly mean to give the president the power to tax under IEEPA, or had the law been stretched too far? The answer would shape the future of presidential authority, setting a precedent for generations to come. As the nation waited, the consequences loomed: economic, political, and constitutional. Every American, from business leaders to everyday citizens, felt the weight of what was at stake. The court's decision would be an earthquake for American governance, reverberating far beyond the courtroom and into the heart of the nation's democracy. Even before the Supreme Court handed down its decision, Trump's response was nothing short of explosive. He wasted no time in making his feelings known, unleashing a barrage of statements and social media posts that captured the nation's attention. He called the case one of the most consequential in U.S. history, warning that a loss would not only weaken America's position on the world stage, but also threaten the very fabric of the nation's economy and security. Trump announced he wouldn't attend the hearing, claiming his presence would distract from the legal arguments. He insisted that the focus should remain on the constitutional issues at stake, not on his own persona. Critics, however, saw this as a calculated move to distance himself from a possible defeat and to undermine the court's legitimacy in the eyes of his supporters and the broader public. Trump's rhetoric quickly escalated, targeting the justices directly and warning of economic chaos if tariffs were struck down. He painted a dire picture of what he claimed would happen if the court ruled against him. He framed the case as a loyalty test, not just for the justices, but for the entire country. In Trump's view, siding with him was synonymous with siding with America, while opposing him meant risking national crisis. This public pressure campaign was classic Trump, turning a high-stakes legal fight into a political spectacle, rallying his base and dominating the news cycle with his confrontational style. But by attacking the process and casting doubt on the court's impartiality, he risked eroding public trust in the Supreme Court and the rule of law itself. The stakes now extended far beyond trade policy. They were about the very foundation of public faith in America's institutions, and the outcome would reverberate for years to come. The Supreme Court case sent shockwaves through global diplomacy. Trump and China's Xi Jinping agreed to a 1-year trade truce, pausing some tariffs and planned hikes. China resumed buying U.S. goods, but the deal's future hinged on the court's ruling. The EU delayed ratifying a major trade deal, wary of America's unstable policy. Trump's unpredictable moves, like suspending talks with Canada and imposing new tariffs after criticism, left allies on edge. New deals with South Korea, Malaysia, and Japan were overshadowed by legal uncertainty. The world saw the U.S. as an unpredictable partner, making long-term planning impossible. Even temporary truces felt fragile. Until the Supreme Court ruled, global trade was in limbo. America's reputation as a reliable trading partner was at stake. The biggest consequence of a Supreme Court loss for Trump is the money. If tariffs are ruled unconstitutional, the government could owe refunds, already $90 billion and rising. Delays could push that figure toward $1 trillion, blowing a hole in the federal budget. Congress might face drastic cuts, new taxes, or massive debt to cover refunds. Beyond the financial chaos, a ruling against Trump would permanently limit presidential power. The IEEPA would return to its original narrow purpose. A win for Trump would expand executive authority. A loss would reassert Congress's control. For businesses, the outcome means either stability or more uncertainty. The justices aren't just deciding a case, they're shaping the presidency and the global economy. The world waits for their verdict.